How's it going, everybody? I'd like to thank everybody for their continued support and continuing to come back and listen to me babble about different technologies. So, I've been silent for a while now, and I wanted to give everybody a quick update as to where we are at. Well, we are at a kind of a tipping point, if you will, in what's going on. Tipping point in the respect that I am almost done with the CCNP service provider exams. I still have 2 left to take, and I will be taking those very, very shortly. Um, as soon as I pass those, I can go ahead and let INE know, and then we can go ahead to the next level, and that is going ahead and yeah, I'm not sure where they are at with the post-production stuff. I know when I upload stuff to them, they have some stuff on their side that they do. That's out of scope for me. I don't worry about that. That's on their production team. And then um, a few days later, or a week or whatever the time frame is, they've already got all the content. So my guess is as soon as I'm done with the exams and I go ahead and say, hey, INE, I'm done. Here you go. Here's my proof. Um, then they'll go ahead and I'm sure that very soon after the videos will be released for your viewing pleasure. So with that being said, that is where I'm at with the CCNP service provider setup. So all is recorded. I have a little bit left to do regarding what's left in the exams and stuff like that. Like I said, I haven't taken them yet, but as soon as I do, then I will give everybody the heads up. I'm not sure if I'm going to do core and edge together the same day, or if I'm going to take them, maybe a week apart or something like that to break it up. I'm not sure yet. It's been about a month since I finished recording them, so I've been pretty much non-stop into CCIE prep since then. And the reason why the gap between taking route and advanced route and core and edge is simply for the fact that I had some personal things come up that had to be taken care of. Nothing bad. Everything's good, but those personal matters had to get taken care of before I could move forward. There was a lot of money that had to exchange hands. So taking an exam wasn't exactly a top priority for me. A lot of internal stuff going on here. So I try to keep my personal business out of the channel simply for the fact that I don't want it out there. But other than that, all is well. I have been trucking along with my SP prep. As you can see, the topology on your screen is what I am using currently to prepare for it. So basically what I'm doing is my really good friend Nick. If you have followed along with the channel for a while, you know back I think June timeframe, my friend Nick released his CCIE Service Provider Comprehensive Guide, and I have been slowly working my way through his content. And I can tell you right now, it's probably the best $200 I ever spent when it comes to a technical document. It kicks everything else's, anything that's service provider on the market, it puts it to shame. And that goes for everything. So what I'm doing is I am blogging so like I mentioned in previous videos and things like that, I am systematically going through his book. And I'll explain my method to my madness here in just a moment. But I'm going through his book in a logical fashion. So I'm labbing the technology up, and I'm taking it. He has, the way he built the book, he's got little bookmarks. So you click on a bookmark at the beginning in the table of contents, and that automatically hyperlinks you in the document to the actual technical aspect of that feature or the topic. So that I'm able to read through the topic. I look at his configs. The configs are pretty straightforward for the most part. It's understanding the logic behind them, what they're doing, things like that. And then as I move forward, that's where I'm going forward. So right now, at the time of this recording, I am currently working on VPLS with BGP auto discovery with BGP as the signaling protocol. It's actually really cool, and I'm doing the ELAN and the E-tree. And there is a difference between the two, but when you're talking about the different technologies and the different features, there is some level of depth that we're getting into now. My blog posts are highlighting those. So some of the blog posts you're going to notice some formatting differences, if you will. So like for instance, I was using the same font and the same color. I've gone back through based off of peer review. I've got some friends that have looked at the blog and have given me some feedback as to what they see, what they think, changing the font, changing the color, and things like that, which has been apparently been very helpful to those to the readers that are watching and following along. So my goal is to lab something up and then put it into a blog post, and then from the blog post, I've already worked out all the bugs. If I've ran into an issue, I document the issue I ran into so that you can avoid it, just as I have. So I'm finding all little caveats and the I wouldn't say anything that can trip you up or knock you down, anything like that, but it's little things that when the author wrote the book, and don't get me wrong that the book is don't take it the wrong way that the book is inaccurate. The book is very, very accurate. There are just some inherited, you have to do this before you can do this. So there were some things that were left out of the book, and there are some things that need to be talked about before you go moving forward with the configuration. So I'm covering those. So not to say I'm being any more thorough than the original author. What I'm doing is I am taking an instructor's approach to it, and I have to assume that you don't know any of this stuff. So I have to go through and give a few paragraphs in the beginning of the post so you know what it is that we're looking at. And then if you take it to the next level, we have a few, we have the the configuration, and the configuration, you can take the lab that I've got pulled up, and you can follow along at home. I supply the topology at the beginning of every post, what we're going to be covering, and then some of the keywords that are out there, trying to bring everybody up to the level that they need to be to move forward with the configuration. So I'm trying to do my best blog-wise to be as accurate as I can, and the blog doesn't go up unless I have the technology up and running. And now normally what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll configure it after I've gone through and read the documentation, I've read the book, and I've labbed it up. If it's labbing, I will actually scroll back and I will include any debugs that I saw, any parser check errors that I ran across, and I will document those in the area that I encountered them. So like for instance, if I try to go underneath a layer 2 VFI configuration for VPLS, and I run into a problem where I can't change the signaling method from LDP to BGP, I'm gonna document that, because, well, you can't do that. You have to you have to rebuild the VFI if you want to do that. That's just an example of one of the things that I ran into. So you'll also notice that the blog posts are not coming out in the order of the book. They're coming out in my own, what I would consider the best way to learn right now. And what I'm doing, my plan of attack, which is the point to this video, is I am not focusing on things that I'm already familiar with. I'm focusing on things that I'm not as familiar with. That being, I'm not focusing on IGP or BGP. I already have a CCIE in routing and switching, so I don't really need to sit there and spend 3 or 4 months going over IGP or BGP. I'm already there. I know the protocols from a routing and switching perspective. I will be actually going back over them later on down the road. So it is right after Thanksgiving of 2016. So it's the beginning of the following week. So when I'm going through and setting this stuff up, I'm not focusing on the areas that I'm already familiar with. If I labbed it up in CCNP, that means I'm probably already somewhat familiar with it, and I'm taking everything that we did in CCNP and I'm adding to it, right? So a lot of this stuff I'm already familiar with. The L3 VPN aspect of things, I already just went through that. So I'm not focusing on L3 VPN for MPLS. What I am doing is I am taking my time and going through layer 2 VPN. Now, I've noticed that when I'm going through and testing the features out, the purpose of doing that is I've labbed it up, I know it works. The verification's there, I'm breaking things down, and then I take that and I put it in the blog, and eventually the blog will be kind of a guideline, if you will, for the videos that I plan on doing later on. Now, I haven't talked to I&E yet as to how we're going to work that, so I have to come up with a game plan. And my game plan is to lab all of layer 2 VPN, which is, I'll look away from the camera for a moment. The goal now is to do layer 2 VPN in an intra-AS, meaning that this big orange circle you see, or rectangle with the rounded corners, that is going to be an intra-AS topology, meaning that you have one BGP autonomous system, not multiple. So right now I am using this as my primary, what's the word I'm looking for? My primary topology for right now. This may or may not be the same as we move forward. If it is, great. If not, so be it. You know, like I said, I'm testing things out as I go. I don't want to go, oh, this isn't going to work for, some feature down the road. I haven't decided how I'm going to work that yet, but when we cross that road, I'll get there. Now, I am focusing on layer 2 VPN in an intra-AS design, and then I'm focusing then, once I'm done with intra-AS, I'll go to intra-AS L3 VPN, and then I'll focus on getting that all done. And then I'll focus on the high availability, the nonstop routing, the loop-free alternate, the fast reroute, MPLS TE, segment routing, MPLS transport profile, and then so my goal right now, and because you guys can't see actually, hang on one second. I think I might be actually able to show a picture of that for the time being. Pardon me while I look that up. So what you see in front of you on the screen is my Bible, if you will, for what I'm following along here. And the idea here is I have all the layer 2 stuff that I'm focusing on. Now, I'm not going to be spending a ton of time on miscellaneous topics like advanced pseudo-wire features, the Ethernet virtual circuit rewrite capabilities. Not really focusing on those aspects, but those are technologies that I will go back and cover down the road. Now, this is what I'm currently working on. Right now, I'm in this area right here, BGP and LDP discovery, and then once I'm done with the ELAN, which is multi-point to multi-point, which is everybody can talk to everybody else in the provider core, then I will move to the E-tree, which is a rooted multi-point, where you are leveraging the capability of route target configuration, and you are selectively determining what VRF import-export values you're going to be using. Now, I'm sorry, not the VRF, but what import-export values you're going to be importing are. So where normally most people from a L3 VPN perspective would be familiar with a VRF would be a route target. You guys are probably familiar with that. Where here we're not using the VRF because the VRF is a layer 3 technology. It's used to create another routing table. Here we're all layer 2, so we're basically trying to propagate MAC addresses across the provider core via BGP and LDP. So what we're doing from BGP and LDP is you can do the ELAN, which is multi-point to multi-point, or you can do the E-tree, which is rooted multi-point, which means that if you change the who can talk to who, then that'll affect who can talk to who. So that's another story. You can do rooted multi-point, which means that I can specifically state that in a given topology, a certain router or routers are the root, and certain other routers are the leaf of that VPLS domain, or the L2 virtual forwarding instance, and forward the data that way. That's what I'm focusing on right now. And then as I get a little further along, and I've done both BGP and LDP from an ELAN and an E-tree perspective. I'll do blog posts for each one of those so that it's covered. Because really, all you're doing between the four of them is with ELAN, you're using what they call the auto route target in iOS, and you're disabling auto route target, and you're manually defining who's going to be able to talk to who in the VPLS domain. So that's going to be how you would attack that. Now, I'm still in the process of going through the technologies. I'm still in the process of going through and testing these capabilities out and how they work, but it is a work in progress. Now, once I'm done with that, I will move into HVPLS, or hierarchical VPLS, and then I'll be dealing with that for MPLS and Q&Q and the access. So we'll take a look at exactly how that works. I had not touched that yet. I know very little about it, other than the fact that hierarchical, it acts kind of like a carrier supporting carrier in a way, where you have a connection into a core part of the network, and that is how you get things in play. Now, one of the things that you'll see down here in the IP and cap L2 VPN, we have E-line with L2TPv3, and then we have ELAN and E-tree with OTV. We will be taking a look at OTV and how that comes into play. One of the things that I wasn't sure where to put it based off of my lack of understanding with it, but now that I've gone through and read up on it, I will be tossing in VXLAN as a replacement for MPLS, because VXLAN doesn't use MPLS. It's like IP encapsulated, but VXLAN is done on the provider side, where OTV is done on the customer side. And so you can do, I'm going to pull away with, VXLAN, it just needs layer 3 connectivity. It doesn't matter if it's MPLS, if it's IP based. As long as you can reach the next top IP, that's really all that matters. So we'll take a look at how VXLAN comes into play. And VXLAN is only supported on the ASRs, or the CSR 1000V, or an iOS, for at least our demonstrations. iOS XRV does not support it. So the configuration is there, except for you cannot create the interface. The VNE interface is not, the configuration is not there. At least for my version of code. I haven't tried anything newer. And then once I'm done with that, we'll jump into PBB EVPN and just regular EVPN, which is going to be strictly on the XR boxes for connectivity. And then we'll throw in XE on the CSRs for route reflection for that. That's as far as we can take it. There's limited functionality. To my understanding, you won't be tested on this in the lab exam, but it's a topic that's on the blueprint nonetheless that you should be familiar with. And then once I'm done with all of this, and I've done the VXLAN, then we will jump in and go to layer 3. And I will start off with VRF Lite, showing you guys how the basics work, and then we're going to work our way up. Now, remember, this is still all intra-AS, and as we're going along, this is going to be V4 and V6 for intra-AS L2 VPN, and then for L3 VPN. Now, there's a couple of caveats that come into play with this that need to be really understood here, and the big thing that we're going to find as we move forward is what capabilities are available and what capabilities are not available. And I'm not going to discuss those now because there's just not enough time, and nor do I want to really go into it at this point. What I want to make sure that you guys understand is this is going to be a tiered approach. So I'm doing intra-AS L2 VPN, intra-AS L3 VPN. Then I'm going to do GRE, MGRE VPN, or doing L3 VPN over basically DMVPN. And then I will be throwing in IWAN, I'll be throwing in Lisp. Lisp is on the blueprint, and you might get tested on that, so it's important to know. I'm doing IWAN simply for the fact that it's I'll be covering DMVPN, which only needs PFR and application visibility and control, or ABC, layered on top of that. So we'll cover that when we get to that point. There's actually a really good book that just got released that I'm going to be picking up here in the next couple days, which is going to be Cisco IWAN, which another gentleman that I know who's another rock solid engineer, his name is Brad. He went out and he wrote a book. He acknowledged a couple of friends of mine who helped me in my pursuit of my route switch CCIE. A guy named Steve is in there. I've known Steve for quite a while now. He helped me out quite a few times when I was preparing for my early part of my preparation for CCIE. So typically when guys like that tell me, hey, this technology is pretty cool, this is how it works. Steve's got a lot of experience deploying IWAN. I've deployed it a couple times, minus the PFR part. So I've done VRF-aware, DMBPN, things like that. Once I've gotten all that done, then we will go into the MPLS TE for this setup here. And the goal is to do these configurations is do the basically it's to do the layer 2 aspect first, get the core configuration up and running. So you get reachability first and foremost. You've tested everything out, and then what I'll do is once I've gotten all of these technologies to work, so everything from static routing straight down to PBB, EVPN, and then VXLAN, which is basically is layer 2 over layer 3, which is ironically is what MPLS and L2TPV3 are. Once I've done that, then I will lay on top of that MPLS TE, high availability, loop-free alternate, fast reroute, things like that. And then I'll take a look at the more advanced capabilities, because that's where those things are going to come into play. And then layer 3 VPN will come into play, and then we'll do MPLS TE for that, segment routing, MPLS TP, multicast, QoS. We're going to do that as we migrate forward. And the thing is, when I'm doing this, there's that's my goal anyway, but that could change. And the reason I say that could change is I don't know all the details behind that yet, and I'm not sure if the direction I'm going with my with the way that I would learn it is going to be the best way to teach it. So the way I'm learning it and the way that the blog post will file out, I'm not sure if that's going to be the way that I end up putting together a video course for. My natural progression for a video course would be do your IGPs, then BGP, then MPLS, then do your layer 2 and layer 3 VPN, intra-AS and inter-AS, and then you'd work into your more advanced features, and then you get into services like MPLS traffic engineering and QoS and multicast and things like that. So those are service add-ons, if you will. Those make they're enhancements to make the network more efficient and potentially more robust, where they aren't required to be in play to get reachability in play. Reachability has to be in play for them to work to begin with, not for them to get reachability to be operational. So there's a lot going on, and it definitely is taking. I wouldn't say it's taking a long time, but the pace that I'm going at now. I'm on pace where I want to be at this point in time, and like I said, I'm halfway through here, and I've only been going at this like 2 weeks. So I feel like I'm in a really good shape. I am studying probably a little more than I should be, but I know once I get through the technologies that I'm not familiar with, like Lisp and Unified MPLS and carrier supporting carrier, the inter-AS VPN stuff in finite detail, once I get through the bulk of intra-AS and inter-AS, L2 and L3 VPN, multicast, QoS, things like that, that will pretty much be the bulk of what I wanted to cover. So I'm hoping that by, before summer next year, I'll be able to have knocked out IGP and then BGP and go from there. I will be doing RIP, I will be doing EIGRP, OSPF, ISIS, BGP. I'll be doing all of them. The reason for that is because this is going to be like a route switch, the routing and switching version 5 on steroids. So I'm taking that to the next level. I'm not going to be doing OSPF or EIGRP or ISIS, any of the IGPs in extreme detail. I'm not going to be going down to the protocol level detail and ripping apart. And I don't know how far I'm going to take that yet. It's still a few months away at least before I start digging into those. But that's my game plan, and so that I can spend the time where I want to spend the time, and then I can just go back and do some blog posts on the IGPs and BGP, and then pretty much just wrap it up. Because there's some things in layer 2 and layer 3 VPN that you have to have in play. So there's BGP and IGP already running. For me, it's just a matter of going through and hitting it up. One of the things that's not listed here, because this is just MPLS for the most part that I'm hitting, is I want to do an IPv6 deep dive. So I'm doing IPv6 in everything that I'm doing right now is already there. So I'm pretty familiar with IPv6, but I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the protocol, the operations of the protocol, services like DNS and DHCP, things like that, and how those come into play, and what the capabilities are for us. In case anybody's interested in knowing, so far, everything for the data plane that I've tested works on CSRs. XRV, it is supported in the control plane. Literally everything that I've tested so far is supported in the control plane. The only thing that I've noticed that is not supported in the control plane for XRV is when you're trying to do what they call EVPL, or Ethernet Virtual Private Line, which basically means instead of you doing a port base, which means that you're dedicating a physical interface to a customer, you are you're trying to multiplex it with sub-interfaces. XRV doesn't seem to support EVPL when you're doing point-to-point pseudo wires. So, for instance, if you create a sub-interface and then you map that to an X-Connect on whether it's L2 X-Connect or whatever the case might be and an XR, it doesn't come up. I've debugged it. It tells me the attachment circuit's not detected, even though the configuration's there. If I move that same point-to-point configuration and move it to a port-based, to where I'm not doing a sub-interface at L2 transport, it works just fine. So in the control plane, not the data plane. The data plane for XRV for layer 2 is non-existent. So it doesn't work. I knew that before I got started, so it's no surprise. I document this repeatedly throughout my blogs, so that you guys won't be going, well, it's not working. Well, it's not going to. Now for L3 VPN, for multicast, it works. I haven't tested segment routing. I haven't tested MPLS transport profile. I've tested some basic MPLS traffic engineering, but beyond that, I have to assume that Lisp, I have to assume the VXLAN, well, VXLAN doesn't work because it's missing the configuration command for the interface. Everything layer 3, minus quality of service and VXLAN are supported. So if you're, I at first was reluctant to try it on XR. Almost every one of my demonstrations has an XR box in it. And the reason for that is because I want to get familiar with actually configuring it and getting it running. So if you follow that mindset, then you should be in pretty good shape. So normally I wasn't planning on doing any demos here, but what I will do is I will show you some verification. So let me go ahead and pull up my routers here. I'm going to go ahead and bring Super Putty over the what do you call it? Router, the routers down here at the bottom. Now, routers down here at the bottom are acting as provider edge routers at the moment. So, for instance, we'll go here on R3. R3 is configured here to be a provider edge router. So if we do a show bridge domain, I am learning MAC addresses and whatnot from the configuration. Now, what I'm doing here is what they consider to be the what do you call that? This is going to be VPLS BGP auto discovery with BGP signaling. So if we do I'll show you the interface. So show run interface gig 3. So I have a service instance configured at the interface level. We do a show run section L2 VPN. I have a context level in play, and you can see that the auto discovery BGP signaling is BGP, and the VE-ID is 3 and the VE range is 11. If we do a show run section bridge, I have a bridge domain so that I have the VPLS configuration. I'm calling the service instance off of gig 3 and I'm specifying the VFI. So I'm mapping those two together so that the VFI is going to know how to connect to the interface, so that the segmentation, the broadcast domain has been built. If we do a show run section BGP, I have BGP configured here, and I'm using the L2VPN VPLS address family, and I'm activating that, and I'm suppressing LDP as the signaling protocol, because through the VFI I'm specifying that I am going to be running BGP signaling. We do a show BGP L2 VPN VPLS all. You can see that I'm learning information from R1, R5, and R6, and going back to our original show command, show bridge domain 100, you can see that I am learning MAC addresses. I'm learning one here off my EFP interface, my Ethernet flow point interface, off of service instance 100, off of that connected network. And then I have two pseudo ports, one to router 10 and the other one to router 9. I only know that because of the fact that I know the MAC addresses of the routers that are in question. Now that means that R3 and R5 and R3 and R6 and R5 and R6 are in a full mesh connectivity, but I'm using a route reflector, which is XR5. XR5 is my route reflector in this particular case. Now, I did say just a moment ago that this is all supported in the data plane, so I will go ahead and prove that for you real quick. If we come in here to router 8, who happens to be directly south of R3, and do a show OSPFE3.1 neighbors, you'll see that I have two neighbors here. We do a show run interface gig 1.100. My configuration to this interface is a .1q tag, and I am running OSPFE3, which is IPv6. We do a show IPv6 route. You'll see that I'm learning both the loopback of 9 and a loopback of 10, respectively. So that means that it is working. This is an ELAN design with BGP signaling. If I was to do the E-tree, I would be manipulating route target import values. So that's going to be a blog post that I work on. I'm actually going to go ahead and kick out a ELAN blog post just so you guys can see the difference. And I'll get that configured. This stuff's really not that difficult when you think about it. It's just a matter of knowing what you're configuring. So knowing how the different things tie together is going to be very, very beneficial to you. So that is the time that I'm spending now and going forward with that. The other thing that I'm going to be doing in the very near future, as I'm going along and I'm documenting this, I'm also going to be putting together some Google Docs that I will share out, and you guys will be able to leverage that as we're moving forward. Don't ask for it now. It's not even ready nothing's there to do. So that is the game plan that I have for my SP prep. It may sound like a lot's going on, but at the end of the day, there's really not. I have a game plan ahead of me. You saw the picture here that basically shows my the course of direction that I have, and you can see I have next 1, next 2, next 3, next 4, and then I technically have next 5 down here. So what I'm doing is I'm building off of one another. And then once I've gone through and I've talked to the author, Nick, who's a really good guy. Anytime I've had a question or a problem, he's been more than helpful trying to help me figure out where I'm going wrong, or some of my outputs are a little bit different than what he shows in his book, but he does such a really good job of going in depth on the explanations. That's one of the things that I really like about his book, is it pretty much removes the need to read the documentation because he's already done all that for you. So I'm going through and focusing on the core infrastructure aspects of it. So I'm basically attacking the CCIE Service Provider version 4 written in lab the same way that I attacked the RNS v5 lab, which was to get core connectivity up and running first, and then fall back later on once I had reachability built to go in and worry about the peripherals, like for instance EBC rewrite, advanced pseudowire features, multicast and QoS. QoS is supported on iOS, just not XRV. The configuration commands are available to type in, but just like BFD, it's not a supported configuration. There's no line card that you can offload the QoS or the BFD configuration to. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now. This will likely change in the near future. I'm presuming that it'll only take me a few months to go through all this and document it. And then once I've gone through all of this and I've hit enter AS and I've done all the stuff that I'm not familiar with, that is probably the point in time where I will, I'll have documented everything. I'll know what to configure, how it works, all that type of stuff will already be done. And then most of the blueprint will be covered. At that point, I will fall back to IGP and I will start doing blog posts on that, and then more than likely start recording at the same point in time. So it'll be one of those things where I want to make sure that I've gone through the material first, then I'll go ahead and fall back to doing the recording, which will help me get ready for the exam. And then one of the things that I'm planning on doing is once I've gotten through the blueprint from a blog and a video perspective, I'll probably start writing my own full-scale labs. And beyond that, conversations have to be had with INE, whether or not they're going to take advantage of the course or not has yet to be seen. I really can't see them not going after it. But then again, they might, based off of, the proposal that I have and what I want to get out of the course for, compensation, we may not come to an agreement. That has yet to be determined, though. So I'll let you know in the near future, probably first of the year time frame, by the time we get that all hashed out. But I'm not too concerned about that aspect right now. I'm more concerned about getting through the blueprint in a timely manner and making sure that I learn the material. A lot of this stuff isn't rocket science, really. One of the things that I am doing is, you'll see in the blog post, is I'm doing some pretty in-depth debugs so you guys can see the aspects of it coming through. So now that I've gone through and I've made sure that BGP, VPLS, BGP, auto discovery with BGP signaling works, I can go ahead and, like for instance, one of the things that I'll do now is on R3 is I will do a debug BGP L2 VPN VPLS updates and hit the enter key, and then I will go ahead and clear BGP L2 VPN VPLS and hit the star, and I will go ahead and I will watch the debugs come in. Now, why is that beneficial? Well, mainly for the fact that you'll be able to see the control plane on the back end. You'll see how the stuff is propagated. You'll see what you learned, things like that. Then the neighbor comes up, and then there should be some flood of information that comes through. You can do that for all of this. Now, one of the things you have to be remember is I am propagating all this information via BGP. So I don't need to enable any of the LDP or point-to-point pseudo-wire commands. I don't need to do any of that because this particular router has all that. Now, if you look over here on router 8, my OSPF broke. I knew that was going to happen because of the fact that I reset the provider's core, which breaks my connectivity between my routers. And now, once the connections are reconverged, OSPF will start to reconverge, however long that might take. But as you can see, if I do a show bridge-domain, you'll see that I've already learned MAC addresses, and I'm back on R8. Momentarily, I should learn connectivity to those routers. So whenever that happens, it happens. Nice thing about blog posts is I don't have to sit there and there they go. So it was just a matter of time before it came back up. Knowing what will happen, but I will I'll always know what's going to happen before it happens, because of the fact that I've already tested this stuff out. I'm going to have the blog post ready to go. And if it happens to work out where INE takes advantage of the video course, I will be putting every one of the blog posts that I do. The link to that will be linked in the slides that you'll get from INE, and that'll be how you'll be able to correlate that. So instead of me doing a workbook, if you will, this will be my way of, it'll be my version of a workbook, where I'm not telling you, hey, go configure this here. It'll be a way for you to know, okay, here's the topology, here's what we're going to be walking through, here's kind of a backstory to how the technology works, and then here's the configuration of the verification commands. And if you configure it this way with with the topology given. If you configure it the way that I've got it set up, this should be your output. And if your output matches mine, you know you're in good shape. So it's a good way for you to follow along at home. There's quite a few people that have already taken advantage of that, because the fact that I'm doing the hard work by putting together the course that people are able to follow. So fortunately for me, most of the hard work has already been done. All I'm doing is taking advantage of the content in the book. I'm really good friends with the author of the book, Nick. He's, like I said, he's been nothing but helpful, and I'm taking advantage of that kind-heartedness, if you will, and moving forward with that. So he's got no problem with me doing it, because the fact that he knows that it's going to be helping. He knows that I have a pretty wide reach through the YouTube channel and through customers at INE. So his book is going to be heavily talked about, because the book is going to be what I use to get to where I'm at. So I am also reading the documentation for certain things. His book doesn't cover every possible topic and all the backstory to it. So there are some RFC lookups that have to be done in order for you to understand a certain aspect of things. And the reason for that is because you will probably see some outputs in some of the show commands, and if you're like me, you want to know what that particular, like for instance, you might see a type value or some sort of debug output, and you're like, what does that mean? So you Google that, and then it leads you to an RFC. You read up on the RFC, and then you end up going down a rabbit hole. But let's say you spend a half an hour to an hour researching that one little subfeature. Well, that extra little bit of time that you spent on that subfeature may be the difference between you passing and failing the written or the lab exam. So at the end of the day, it really depends on how much effort you want to put into it. The other thing that I want to talk about real quick is don't be discouraged if you don't get the material right away. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of things that I'm having to learn right now that I'm not getting right away. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So for instance, one of the things that's very, how can I put it? Let me do a show BGP L2 VPN all, or VPLS all. Let me go ahead and expand this out. The route distinguisher is going to be this guy, and that the VE ID is going to be, we'll say 6 in this case, and the block set will be 1. So some of the information that's in here, you'll see that is different than any BGP output you've probably ever seen before. It looks pretty close to IP for BGP, but this is not IP for BGP. This is layer 2 VPN, or MAC, basically MAC propagation via BGP. So now if we do a show MPLS forwarding table, you're going to see some stuff in here, and you're going to be like, what the heck? So I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I'm still not entirely sure what it all means. So I'm still, like I said, I'm still in the learning phase. There's actually a pretty thoroughly written tech note doc that Nick forwarded me the other day as I was going through that. I basically jokingly said, dude, I am hating you right now. And he goes, why? I said, because there is a crapload of math on BGP auto-discovery with BGP. And he knew what I was talking about, because that's typically going to be something specific to VPLS. And he goes, oh, don't hate me, hate Juniper, because they're the ones that came up with it. Because I don't know if you knew this or not, there's actually 2 RFCs. And I don't have any of this information in front of me, it's just what I've retained. You have RFC 4761 and 62. 61 was the direction that Cisco went with VPLS auto-discovery signaling, which was LDP. Juniper went 4762 with BGP auto-discovery for BGP signaling. Now, both are RFCs, both are standards. Both Juniper and Cisco both support the capability, but Juniper ended up coming out with some ridiculously complicated math, because you have to have a way for a provider edge router to be able to allocate label space to another router and make sure that that router uses a specific label space and another router doesn't use that same label space. So it gets a little complicated. I'm still going through the back end information to try to understand what they mean. So I will be doing a separate blog post for that. So if you watch the BGP auto discovery BGP video, or if you read that blog post, I'm purposely leaving some content out because I plan on going back and doing a deep dive in a blog post later on it. So I'm not going to hold my forward progress up on I won't say a small aspect of a subset feature of a technology. I'm going to postpone it to a later date once I've gone through some other material like the rest of this stuff, and I can always fall back to this because configuring this stuff is really not that difficult. Once you've done it a bunch of times like I have so far, you sort of learn how to quickly configure things and go from there. But at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. So well, the other thing too you'll see in the blog post is I try to be I try to have as many things running at the same time as I can. So for instance, if I'm running through and I'm doing BGP auto discovery with LDP, I'm going to do LDP for the signaling. I'm going to do that in an ELAN and an E-tree. I'm going to do it with port-based. I'm going to do it with sub-interfaces. I'm going to do it with Q and Q. So there's definitely a lot of the different scenarios that you could run into. And for me, it's easy. It's just a matter of me configuring a couple extra lines of command on a particular router, and up it comes. So that's what's up. This update went a little longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. The main factor here is that I wanted to give everybody a pretty deep update as to what's going on and what you can expect. And if you have any questions, comments, things like that, if there's something you'd like to see covered in a blog post or in a video, I'm following the blueprint for the baseline, but I'm not afraid to throw things into it like VXLAN and IWAN are not technically in the blueprint, but they're technologies that have relevancy to the technology world that we're working inside of right now. So if you have questions about maybe, what would be the best way, or how would you configure VXLAN? Well, it's actually not that difficult, and here's the configuration you would use to do that. So I'm going to be definitely doing taking a bunch of different paths with VXLAN and IWAN and things like that. But these are technologies that you guys can take a look at, and the details behind them as we go along. Now, you might ask, how confident am I that I'll keep this topology? I really don't know, but I think I might be able to run with it for a while. I would like to think I'd be able to use this for the entire video course, the entire blog post series, but I don't know yet. It's too early to tell. And then if I start getting into the weeds and I go, well, this isn't actually going to work, or this issue popped up, things like that will have to be dealt with accordingly. So the topology might change a little bit. It might grow. It's definitely not going to get any smaller, but it definitely might grow. Especially if we get into like inter-AS and carrier supporting carrier, things like that. I'm sure it'll grow to probably 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more routers. But I had the hardware to run it. I might do 2 or 3 more XR routers, maybe even 4. I might go 10. What I'm trying to do is try to keep the CSR to XRV, the quantities. I'm trying to keep it close to 2/3 CSR, and then, as you can see in the core, it's 6x6, and that's what I'm trying to do in the core, and everything on the outsides is the CSRs. I might increase, when I increase this to, if I throw out 8 more routers, I'll probably do 4 and 4. 4 CSRs, 4 XRV, and go from there. Because one thing you're going to want to do is, for any type of technology you test out or feature you play with, you want to make sure that you're testing it on both iOS and XR, and you're testing it iOS to XR, and you're testing it iOS to iOS, and you're testing it XR to XR. So you're testing all the different variations you could possibly be tested on, so that when you get to the lab exam, you're not like, oh my god, I didn't test that feature out. The other thing too is a good friend of mine, Luke, he made a blog post on his exam for when he passed SPv4, and one of the things that he mentioned in there was that he didn't go through and leverage iOS, which you can download the iOS code from Cisco if you've got a viral license, and go and do that, and then that will let you come in and download the code. And I'm actually running, I will be able to run a few straight iOS boxes in ESXi by just uploading the VMDK and attaching that to a VM. So there's that capability too. I haven't tested those features out yet on that, but when the time comes, I'll know what to type in, because CSR code is almost identical. But that's pretty much what's going on. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I would hope you wouldn't have any concerns. But if you have anything to add, would like to see anything, if you're not sure, if you know for a fact it's like a wireless or a security or a data center topic, like for VPCs and things like that, VDCs, if it's Nexus specific or storage specific, you might as well not even ask, because I'm not focusing in those areas right now. But if it's anything to do with routing or switching, service provider, things like that, feel free to drop a line in the comments below. If you want to see a specific feature tested out, hey, throw it out there. I might just throw it in there just for good measure, and then say, hey, this was a blog post request. Here you go. This is the config you would use. So until next time, guys, thank you for the support. We are quickly approaching the 5,000 subscriber range. We've got about 350 more to go before we're there. And the channel is growing on a regular basis, and I'm surprised every day when I see the subscriber count grow, and the responses have been extremely positive. So I can't thank you guys enough for all the support. And until next time, you guys take it easy and be good to each other. I lost the stop button. There it is. Take it easy, guys.